Good morning. It is such a beautiful November day. It's incredibly still and, well, it's not as sunny as it was, but it's sunnier than it has been the last few days. It's been rather grey here in Wales. I'm standing on Tanybwlch beach, which is somewhere we have been before, but the last time I was here it was too windy to record a walk along the beach, and instead we walked along the river, which is a little way over that way. But today I really fancied putting my feet in the sea, and it would be lovely if you would like to come for a short walk with me. I do love Tanybwlch beach, but it's somewhere that I don't come to very often anymore. I used to come here a lot. I think the last time we walked here I explained that I used to live just a few minutes walk away from the beach in a block of flats which no longer exists, and every time I drive past and see this gap where it was, I do feel slightly shocked because my memories are all still there. I can picture walking around the flat that I lived in and it feels like it still exists, but it doesn't. But this beach does, and it is a lovely beach to walk along, though often it is very, very windy here. This is particularly exposed part of Cardigan Bay. Ooh. Let's just get my feet wet. Oh, that's fantastic. I have to say, as you can see, I wear my Wellington boots. I'm not I'm not putting my bare feet in the sea, it's far too cold for that. But this is sort of the view I used to have from the front of my flat, and occasionally we'd see dolphins in the bay. And one summer when I walked down to the beach, there was a little inlet just behind me, and there was a dolphin in there playing, which was the closest I think I've been to a dolphin, and it was lovely just to stand there and watch. So I have walked on this beach quite a lot, but often it would be too cold to walk down here, and I will be walking where I took you the last time we were here, down by the river, and that walk goes on, and I used to do quite a long walk. And these days, as you know, I like to keep my walk short and slow, and I'm learning as I continue to make these podcasts that I need to be very mindful of that, and actually the walks are probably going to have to be shorter and slower, especially as the winter comes. And I've made a decision that I'm not going to aim to get these podcasts out on Saturdays anymore. I'm just going to publish them when they're ready. Just go with the flow a little bit with how my energy is, and just see what that means in terms of a schedule. For a very, very long time I was someone, well I still am, someone who likes to be reliable. I like to say I'm going to do something and do it at a specific time, and particularly with my One Thing Today podcasts, I was very, very keen to produce those on a very regular basis, send them out pretty much each working day and stick to that schedule, and I did pretty much for the best part of 7 years, and partly because my health has deteriorated, and partly because I'm just learning to be kinder to myself. I think it's time to move away from schedules and just see what that means, accepting that for me it's going to feel like a very uncomfortable thing for a while, and probably for some of you it's going to mean what I do isn't going to be something that's useful to you. I do know some people rely on schedule, my schedule and my routine. And it's for years, it has been something that I've talked about a lot and even taught around, the idea of setting a manageable schedule and sticking to it. But it's no longer the case for me. That serves me well. And it's time to move on and see what that means. And I do hope that this sort of new vehicle, these podcasts, and what I'm doing to support the podcast over on Patreon will be useful and will be, well, maybe a reasonably good example of something to follow if you're in a similar position to me, that you need to make a living, but you're limited in what you can do. I hope that I can show you, and show me as well, that there are possibilities, that things can work within those limits and working without struggle. And that does feel like it feels like a big deal to me. It feels quite exciting as well. So we'll just have to see what the weeks and months bring. And I feel a certain sense of peace around that decision. It feels like a very good decision to me. And walking along this beach on a calm day feels like a very good way to mark coming to that decision. So that's where I am. I do hope you'll be able to hear what I've been saying. With all this wind, usually it's wind that stands between me and what I'm saying, but here actually the sea is quite loud, isn't it, against the rocks. So fingers crossed. If you can't, I shall either do a voiceover or perhaps just talk about this again during the work session. Oh gosh, it's beautiful here. That cliff in front of us is called Eltwen. I think I did mention it the last time we were here. And I just think it's a beautiful view. It's something that I looked at out of my bedroom window in the flat that I lived in for about 3 years. So it feels like home to me, looking at that view. And it's something that I drew an awful lot to when I first started drawing, and I started taking a foundation course, and then I started drawing classes, and then I did a foundation course many years ago now, probably about 20 years ago now, at about the same time that I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, in fact. This view was the thing that I drew again and again, so its shape is etched in my memory. Unlike the flats which have disappeared, I don't expect Eltwen is going to disappear anytime soon, but maybe there will be a time that I'm not able to walk here and look at it, but I certainly will be able to remember it. And I hope you've enjoyed looking at it with me today and walking along this beautiful beach on this surprisingly still and, well, not too cold November morning. I hope you'll join me for this week's, well, I say this week's work session, the work session that goes with this podcast, whether this I'm going to try and get away from talking about time within these podcasts. It might take me a little while to do that, but I hope you'll join me for the podcast work session. Hello, welcome to the work session, the creativity session, whatever I'm calling this bit of the podcast going forward. Probably creativity session. We will see what feels right. Since the walk, the weather here has changed quite dramatically. It was a beautifully still day when we went for our walk on the beach. Since then, it's been incredibly windy and it's been very, very wet. I've been looking after my neighbour's chickens, and particularly in the evening, it's been quite hard to go out there in the rain to tuck them in at night. But I've stopped doing that now. My neighbours are back, so I haven't had to do that today, which has been good. And it has stopped raining right now, so I took advantage of the fact it wasn't raining to come out here for this, to do a little bit of work on my blanket, which is growing. Ooh, gosh, I don't even know if I can lift it all up actually. But I'm on the final colour, which isn't going to be very big. I think probably about that much. We'll see. And then it's done, which will be good. It's taken me so much longer than I thought it was going to. And this is the first of two, the second one. The second one is going to be smaller. The second one's for a very small person indeed, and this one is for quite a small person, but not quite as small as the second one. There we go. 20 minutes on the clock. Alexa, set the timer for 20 minutes.
20 minutes, starting now.
I'm doing that as well because this timer has started to be rather unreliable, much like me. Finding being reliable incredibly difficult at the moment. I don't know whether it's just that it's winter or whether it is just how I am and how I'm going to be going forward, but yeah, just finding it very hard to do anything at a set time at the moment, and doing my best to accept that and work around that. When I was talking to you during the walk, I was feeling in quite a good place about my decision to really just go with the flow at the moment, and I do think that's the right thing for me. But I still have some things. That I need to do at certain times. Yeah, and I'm noticing just how hard they are, which I suppose makes me realise that it is the right decision to be cutting back as much as possible on those. I feel like I've got a few more hard decisions to make about, particularly around work at the moment. But I shall make them. It was so lovely having my week off last week. I can't remember if I said this to you during the walk, but it was the best week off I've had in a very, very long time. I didn't find it difficult at all to stay offline, which surprised me, because I have been quite reliant on being online, particularly as I was talking about in the last podcast. Using my phone as sort of a distraction, I suppose, from all the difficulties and decisions I'm feeling I'm needing to make at the moment. But I didn't miss it at all. Turned it off. Well, I didn't turn it off. I turned all the notifications off. I left the phone bit working, and the text. I still receive text messages. I don't get many, but there are one or two that I get that I did need to be able to get. So that was all I had it for. I didn't really have it in my pocket, just had it in the house. Though on the one or two occasions it was in my pocket, if I popped out here, for instance, and I put it in my pocket to come out here, I found myself reaching for it. I wasn't thinking, I was just reaching for it, and before I knew it, I had it kind of clicking towards something, either the news or Facebook. But I think I caught myself every time. I don't think I saw a news headline all week, and I didn't see Facebook. I didn't check my email all week, and it was lovely. It was lovely. I don't know if it's how it'd be all the time, but I do want to bring some of the peace that I got around that with me. Yeah, it was particularly nice not seeing news. Since I've been sort of back, I sort of think of myself as being back somehow. So I've been away and now I'm back, even though I'm exactly the same place as I was before. I bought a newspaper at the weekend and had a really nice time actually reading that. And the thing I noticed about looking at a newspaper, particularly the one that I bought, was that I wasn't being hit by headlines. The two big things going on in the world for me at the moment, the sort of the Brexit stuff and the stuff around Donald Trump in the US. There were two stories on the front page about that. That was all, and the rest of the newspaper was, well, bits of news, a lot of it quite dull. Some interesting articles to read. Nice magazine with a crossword in it. So news was a bit different than how I've been consuming it because of that. And it was nice. It was quite relaxing, and I felt able to be a bit more in touch with what was going on in the world without actually being overwhelmed by it. So I'm wondering if doing that every now and again, perhaps at the weekend, going to buy a newspaper and sit with a cup of coffee and have some breakfast might not be a bad thing to do. And perhaps the rest of the week, just try and avoid that sort of obsessive consumption of news, that scrolling through news, that sort of 24-hour news, rolling news that it doesn't really change in any perceivable way unless something really dramatic happens, but it just changes slowly over time in a way that you don't really see. You're just sort of immersed in it. Or I have been. I mean, that's how I've been with it. Didn't used to be like that at all, but I've got a bit obsessed, I think. So yeah, maybe a Saturday or Sunday newspaper. The newspaper I bought as a weekend edition. It's not out on a Saturday and a Sunday, it's just out once at the weekend. And I read it on Sunday. So already the news in it was a bit stale. And that felt nice, being a little bit removed. And I think for me, being offline is that sort of being a little bit removed. A little bit of space to think and digest. So anyway, so it worked well. So it was a good week off. It was a very good week off. I'm really glad I did it. And I imagine I'll do it again. Until I started making these podcasts, I was in a routine of taking 1 week off every month, so it was a set week. And maybe I've talked about that in these podcasts before. And that was my rest week. But it very rarely felt like a rest week. It felt like I usually... time has stopped. It felt like I usually was in desperate need of it, so it wasn't anything to enjoy. Yeah, it was a good idea at the time. It was a good step, deciding to take a rest week. I mean, that was rejecting the idea of working continually. So I think it was a very good idea to have a rest week. But deciding to take them as and when I really need them. Maybe that'll be more regularly. I don't know. We'll have to see. Certainly going forward with these podcasts, I'm not going to record them to get them ready for a Saturday anymore. I'm just going to make them as it feels right. I shall do the walk, and then I shall do the work session. When I have both of them, I shall edit them together and send out the podcast. I'm going to put it onto Patreon first for a couple of days, and then I shall put it onto YouTube and on my website, so it'll be public a little while after it's been released on Patreon. And we'll just see what sort of routine, or if any routine does develop, or whether it just happens as and when. I imagine they're still going to be reasonably regular. I mean, I don't think they're going to be, once a month or anything. Well, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Perhaps I shouldn't say that. But I sort of think they're going to be reasonably regular, just not quite. Who knows? Maybe there'll be more, of course. Who knows what will happen? That felt like a really good decision. And it's something I'm going to carry through to the other things that I do, I think. Not going to work to set times anymore as much as I possibly can. And that means I'm going to need to make more changes than I've made already. And that feels really scary. Feels scary particularly around making money, because a lot of the things that I do are me being somewhere at a certain time. I'm less than they used to be, but that's sort of what I did, and these podcasts have been a bit of a exploration of not doing that. So still doing some of the things that I did live, but doing them in this podcast. And just seeing how that feels, and if it works, and if there's interest in it. So there we are. That seems to be where I am this week. Sorry, I'm talking an awful lot about myself. But there we are. So how are you? How has your week been? What are you doing? What are you working on? Now I can see the finish line with this blanket. I mean, I'm not rushing towards it. I'm going to let it take the time it needs, but I'm sort of thinking a bit, ooh, what does that mean? What can I do next? And as I say, I have got another blanket to work on, but I think I might take a pause between that and this and work on something smaller and quicker. I've got a couple of ideas. I've got some socks to finish, and I've got an idea for a gift for somebody, a smaller something than this. So yeah, feeling a bit excited about possibilities as well, which is nice. And just getting into that lovely feeling of that the world is slowing down a bit for winter, and enjoying that, and feeling like I can let myself enjoy it. I wonder if last week in a way was a bit of a transition from autumn to winter for me, actually, and just slowing down even more. If you're following me on Patreon, you'll know that I've been making my Christmas cake this week, which has been lovely. And that's done. It's sitting there wrapped up. I'm going to feed it with brandy for a couple of weeks and then just leave it as long as I can, which probably might not be very long, until I start eating it. I cover my Christmas cake in marzipan and chocolate rather than icing. And the cake itself, it's a fruit cake, but it has got chocolate in it. It always feels quite a special thing. This gets made once a year, and I mean, there is chocolate in it, and there's fruit in it, obviously, but it's not too sweet. I think when I buy fruit cakes, which I don't do very often, but they often are very, very sweet, and this isn't. It's basically trail mix. Nuts and fruit and chocolate, all baked together with eggs and ground almonds, a little tiny bit of flour in it, but not very much. It's an 8 pound. I weighed it. 8 pounds. So it's a heavy cake. 8 pounds is about 4 kilograms, a little bit more, I think, isn't it? A little bit less. No, maybe it's a bit less. 2.2 pounds to a kilogram, isn't it? So yeah, a little bit less than 4 kilograms, I think. My brain's working properly. Alexa, what's 8 pounds in kilograms?
8 pounds is 3.6 kilograms.
3.6 kilograms, there we are. So yeah, it's quite a weighty cake. I shall look forward to that anticipation, just for a month. Just if I can wait a month from when it's made to when I start to eat it, will be good. I think just that anticipation of it. We'll see. I haven't done it this year, but I often make sloe gin, and that's a real challenge to wait for that. And it is so much better. I mean, the best thing to do with sloe gin is to make it one year and drink it the next. And I've never managed that. I have got some mincemeat that I made last year still for this year, and I will make more this year, but I made so much last year that there was some left over. So that's what to do with sloe gin, I suppose, isn't it? Is just make an extra big batch so that I was ahead. But as I say, I've not made it this year anyway. I used to make sloe gin and blackberry whiskey on a regular basis, but I don't drink very much. I think it's probably better for me not to drink very much. So, but it is nice though to have a little bit this time of year. But I have mulling wine. Yeah, so that's nice of an evening to have a steaming mug of mulled wine. I wonder if you have any particular traditions at this time of year. Have I asked you that already? Did we talk about that in the last podcast? I can't remember. I should make notes. But it's been 2 weeks since the last podcast, so, or nearly 2 weeks, so I feel a little bit forgetful. But yeah, just that sort of a few winter traditions do feel lovely. I wonder if you can hear the rain. It's started again. It does feel nice sitting here listening to the rain. It was nice sitting in the house listening to the rain, but it wasn't nice having to go out in it. Dear, there's a chance that when my neighbours leave, we'll be adopting the chickens. They might not be moving somewhere that has a big enough garden for them, and I've said that we'll take them if they either can't take them with them or they can't find them a home. So it might be a regular thing that I need to go out in the rain to let the chickens out in the morning and to put them to bed at night. We will see. It won't be as far to go. There's a bit of a trek down to the end of my neighbour's garden where the chickens live now. So it won't be anywhere near as far, and they'll probably live just outside the studio if they do come here. But I do quite like the idea. I'm quite excited about the idea. I would like to have chickens. I just never really thought I could have them here, but actually I think it would work. We've been thinking where they could go, and I think probably there is somewhere that their house could go. But it will be an all-weather commitment. But one of the chickens particularly is quite old and she doesn't lay anymore, so I think it'd be very hard to find her a home. So I think I would want her to have a nice home. And if we're having her, we might as well have the others. So I don't know, watch this space, we'll see what happens. I mean, it might be a little while before they move even. We'll see. There was the advantage of having eggs, of course. I don't get as many now. Now Mabel is older and doesn't lay, but there are still some. I had a couple of fresh poached eggs last night, straight from the egg box. Which were delicious. Actually, I had them on potato rosties, which are sort of grated potatoes with onions. Felt like a really good supper, actually, at the end of the day, which wasn't such an easy day yesterday. Had one of those days when I just couldn't do the things I planned, so I had to cancel something in particular, which I really didn't like to have to do. It took me a while to accept that I needed to as well. It's always better to realise earlier on that I need to, but even so, it was good that I did. So it was lovely to have a treat of some poached eggs from the chickens. So they were sort of like my parting thank you, I think, for taking care of them. And it has just been me taking care of them as well, because I'm on my own this week. So it's been a bit of it's been a morning and evening thing, which perhaps that's partly why I wasn't really able to do very much yesterday. It's been just that little extra something to do that perhaps tipped me over, which of course is something to think about if we're going to adopt them full time. but I think it would be easier. They'd be so much closer to the house for a start. There, how have you got on? I shall just wait for the echo to do its thing. Alexa, stop. I seem to have come to a... This is the place to stop. And if I've made a mistake again. Anyway, never mind. I hope you've had a good 20 minutes. I hope you've moved something, whatever you're working on, just a little. Made a bit of progress. Not a huge amount, but you know. We're getting there slowly with this. A few more sessions, I think, and it'll be done. So yes, I hope you've had a lovely 20 minutes. I hope you've been working on something that you've been enjoying doing, and I do hope that you're able to live life at the pace that you need to. It sounds like an easy thing, doesn't it? But it feels like my life's work learning to live at the pace that I need to, and I hope that that you're able to do that, or at least do your best with doing it. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do give it, if you're watching on YouTube, please do give it a thumbs up. If you would like to support the making of these podcasts, then do pop over to Patreon. I'd be very grateful. These podcasts are the way that I make my living. For a long time, I've done things, free stuff, in the hope that it brings things in further down the road. I talked about this at the very beginning of making these podcasts, and that's a sort of classic way of working on the internet, and it's not a bad model. But when energy is so limited, it's impossible to do one thing in the hope that you can do something else to make money. So I am doing this, I'm offering this, and I'm asking for support in doing it. So if you're able to help, if you're able to support me on Patreon, I will be very grateful. Patrons do get thanks in return, extra bits and pieces. So do go and have a look on Patreon to see if there's anything there that interests you, or just maybe you'd like to support this podcast. I'd be very grateful if you did. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. I won't promise exactly when that will be, but it won't be too long, I promise. Take care.